if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Here's the thing, people. We are getting the advance notice that our parents and grandparents never received. What are we going to do with this information so that we get there in style with all of our faculties? See, we're getting the advance notice because, and by the way, my favorite centenarian, I must tell you, is my wife's grandfather, Papa High. Papa High, I asked him when I was getting ready to release the book, I said, Papa High, you're 100 years old, man. You got to give me a quote. Give me a quote. He says, I don't know what to say. Never in a million years did I think I'd live to 100. I said, that's perfect, Papa High, perfect. And so we're getting the advance notice because this generation of 100-year-old people, and please listen to this. This is huge. This generation of 100-year-old people, when they were born 100 years ago, their life expectancy scientifically was only 50 years. So if you could imagine the doctor back then taking the baby out and saying, oh, you beautiful baby, I hope you live 50 beautiful years. Because back then, that's all that people were expected to live was 50 years. And so here now, could you imagine, I mean, you think about outliving your life expectancy by twice what you thought that you were going to live? And we wonder, how many of you have ever seen the movie Grumpy Old Men? Raise your hand if you ever saw the movie Grumpy Old Men. It was such a popular movie that they even made a sequel. Do you know what the sequel was? Grumpy Your Old Men. But in all fairness to these grumpy old men and grumpy your old men, could you imagine, I mean, be honest, right? Be honest. Raise your hand if you've ever been a day late on a project. Raise your hand. Come on, be honest. Okay, did you get a little grumpy, yes or no? Okay, how many of you were ever a week late on a project? Raise your hand if you were ever a week late. Anybody ever a month late on a project? Okay, did you get really grumpy? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You did, right? Could you imagine if you were 50 years late dying? And I know that's kind of funny when you think of it that way, but really think about it. If you have in your mind, if you have your life packaged in a certain amount of time, and all of a sudden that time comes, and then the next day and the next day, and you sit around wondering, is today the day? Is today the day? And all of us have seen this, because raise your hand if you have somebody in your family that has outlived somebody else in your family. Raise your hand if you know people like that. Okay, so almost all of you. How many of you have seen, like I remember when my dad approached in his mid-60s, because that's when his dad had a heart attack. The year before he approached the same age that his dad died, I think it was the most anxious year of his life. Raise your hand if you know anybody that ever went through something like that. See, most of you. So you can understand how when you outlive your life expectancy, how it can affect you emotionally and spiritually and physically. But I think what we've learned, in fact I know what we've learned in the 100-year lifestyle by studying this, is that aging is only 30% of aging is genetics, 70% is lifestyle. It's 30% genetics, 70% lifestyle, according to the MacArthur Foundation. So for a lot of you, when you're thinking about how old your parents were and grandparents were when they got sick or died, what's important to understand that we didn't just inherit our genes. I sat on a plane just recently with a woman who was really concerned. She was about 80 pounds overweight, and she was telling me that her mother was really sick and she was a diabetic. And she said to me, you know, I'm really concerned because I'm a borderline diabetic and it runs in my family. And I said to her, I hear what you're saying, but what's really important for you to understand is that we know that quality of life in longevity is only 30% genetics and 70% lifestyle. And what you have to understand is in your family, you didn't just inherit the genes, but you also inherited the lifestyle that made your parents sick. And so what we have to understand as people who are smart enough to come to a seminar like this, and sit in an audience and read the 100-Year Lifestyle and realize that we have the opportunity now, because we're getting the advance notice, to choose our lifestyle and set it up in such a way that we can live quality of life every single day and enjoy incredible health and abundance financially and great relationships and passion at every age and lifelong learning and a surround sound system of support and all the things that are laid out in the 100-Year Lifestyle, because of the advance notice that we received from this nursing home generation, or these accidental centenarians that are teaching us through their experience that we will all, as individuals and as a society, probably live longer than we ever thought. And when you understand that we have the opportunity to choose, how many of you can start to get a little excited about the rest of your life? Anybody? Yeah, it's kind of exciting, isn't it? You know, it was interesting to me because when you think about that this generation was blindsided by their longevity, they did not plan or prepare. Many of them didn't want to get there because many of them didn't really live the last decades of their life because they sat around waiting to pass away. See, so we now have the opportunity to choose. With this advance notice, we have the opportunity to use this information to begin to make changes to live an extraordinary quality of life.